Did the Rangers tamper with Brady Tkachuk as the Senators are accusing them of doing? And is there any chance the Senators would consider trading their superstar captain?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1203 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. So I want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And of course, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So doing a little bit of a catch-up episode here. This is technically the 6th episode of the week for Locked On New York Rangers. And if you're new around here, we usually do 5, but there's been a whole bleep storm around this team for quite some time now. And all the good, the bad, and the ugly. It feels like maybe the dust is finally settling. Although, as I say that, they'll probably strike another trade, before I'm done recording here. But yeah, like I said, catch-up episode. A couple of things I want to kind of circle back to that I've been meaning to talk about and just haven't been able to get there, given the Trouba drama, the Trouba trade, the Igor Shesterkin extension, and all the hot takes that everybody had on that. Obviously, there were games being played somewhere in the middle of all that as well. And so now a couple of things I wanted to get back to, like I said, beginning with the Ottawa Senators owner, Michael Andlauer, accusing the Rangers of tampering with Brady Tkachuk. Or I guess to be more specific, soft tampering with Brady Tkachuk. And to just kind of bring everybody up to speed here in case you miss, anything that happened in the last couple of days. So, like I said, Senators owner Michael Andlauer said the Rangers were soft tampering with Brady Tkachuk due to an article in the New York Post written by Larry Brooks that said the Rangers were targeting a trade of Tkachuk. And that was basically it as far as the accusation was concerned. You first start to see these rumors kind of fly on social media, and I see a couple of things. I'm like, okay, I'll check that out later. There's got to be more to it than that. That was pretty much it as far as like the basis of his accusations. That's pretty much all he got, or all that he put forth. But this is what Andlauer, had to say about the situation. Here's my frustration. I talk about how I care for these players and I care for their families. You make a commitment to a team for 6-7 years. You set roots in the community. You're part of this community. There's a lot of pressure on these young men. Yes, people might say they make millions of dollars, but the reality is there comes a responsibility with that. And when I see our captain, in the 1 year I've been here as Senators owner, there's been 3 separate occasions where there's been fires we had to put out. I can tell you 100% there's never actually been an ounce of discussion about Brady Tkachuk being anything other than an Ottawa Senator. So based on everything he said there, to me, what the Rangers did does not constitute tampering at all. I have not memorized every single nook and cranny of the NHL rulebook or the CBA agreement or anything like that. But if this is tampering, then I would imagine just about every team in the AHL is guilty of tampering in one way or another. It's basically just an article that suggests that the Rangers might be interested in trading for a player. I don't think that there's anything substantial there as far as these tampering allegations are concerned. I will say this, though, in defense of Andlauer and in defense of the Ottawa Senators in general, it has to be starting to get pretty tiring to hear your captain, his name constantly coming up in trade rumors, whether it's with the Rangers or somebody else, when there's been no evidence really that the Senators are in any way interested in even seeing what kind of offers are available out there. I mean, think about this. This is your captain. It's a homegrown superstar player, just 25 years old, signed for what I would say is a very reasonable amount of $8.2 million through the end of the 2027-2028 season. For what it's worth, Tkachuk does not have trade protection of any kind right now, but he will, beginning next year and lasting throughout the rest of his contract, have a full no-move clause. So yeah, if you're a Senators fan, you're probably getting sick of this. You're probably sick already because the Senators haven't made the playoffs since 2017. So there's obviously been a drought going on there. And this is your guy. I mean, this is your captain, and this is somebody that should be a pillar of Senator hockey and somebody that you should build around. So yeah, I would imagine it would get pretty tiring to hear your captain, his name always coming up in trade talks. Granted, the Rangers just traded their captain, but that was a completely different set of circumstances for about a million different reasons. We don't really need to get into that right now. And, again, it's also possible that, there are teams out there that are interested in Brady Tkachuk, but yeah, bottom line, if I'm the Senators, I'm probably getting pretty sick of that, all these rumors coming out about Brady Tkachuk. Having said all that, this is a New York Ranger podcast, and while we're talking about Brady Tkachuk, we might as well have some fun with this and throw out a couple of, trade hypotheticals here. Again, I don't think there's any way the Senators would be looking to move him, but I have talked about in the past on here, that it feels like the Rangers do need a shock to the system. You could argue that maybe that shock to the system has already occurred. Of course, that being the trade of Captain Jacob Trouba to the Anaheim Ducks. But, do they look to make more moves? The hot rumor around the Rangers after they trade Jacob Trouba was that Chris Drury is not done and that more trades could be coming. There were a bunch of names thrown out there, everybody from Ryan Lindgren to Riley Smith to Capo Caco, maybe a couple other guys as well. But as far as adding a player goes, as far as going out there and not just trading away your own guys, but adding somebody else from another team, I don't think it gets much more impactful than Brady Tkachuk. So if there was any way to make this happen, I would probably, if I'm the Rangers, back up the truck to get him. But it would not be cheap. And there is a lot to consider. You would need, I would say, multiple first-round draft picks would have to be on the table. You probably would have to include a defenseman that you really don't want to include. And I'm not talking about Keandre Miller because, again, Miller's stock is down right now. They're not going to, the Senators aren't going to even, they're going to hang up the phone if you begin your trade proposal by including Keandre Miller's name. And I'm not dissing Miller. That's just the fact of the situation right now. You have to give up, again, I think big-time assets, which probably starts with at least 2 first-round draft picks. You'd probably have to throw in a Braden Schneider or even an Adam Fox to even get the Senators to start taking you seriously. I think Lafreniere is a player that the Senators would possibly insist on if they were to move Brady Tkachuk to the Rangers. And I would say, as far as prospects are concerned, you're looking at a situation where you would have to probably include at least one of Brennan Hoffman or Brett Berard. You could be looking at, a throw-in of somebody like Mancini or Jones as well. I mean, you have to really come with a big-time offer to get them to even take you the slightest bit seriously. And if Andlauer is to be believed, and the Senators are to be believed, then he's not available in any trade, Brady Tkachuk, that is. Now, on one hand, everybody has a price, and that could be posturing on the Senators' point of view that, okay, we're 99% not going to trade this guy, but we're going to put it out there like there's absolutely zero chance so that if any team does come calling, they know they have to really bring it with an offer that just absolutely, knocks our socks off, basically. But overall, to conclude this whole thing, it's fun to think about the idea of Brady Tkachuk as a New York Ranger. And hey, you know what? He's only got, I say only, he's got 3 years left on his contract after this season ends. So he'll still be in his 20s when he's an unrestricted free agent years from now. Maybe the Rangers are in on him when that situation comes to fruition. But for right now, can't see the Senators trading Brady Tkachuk to the Rangers or any other team for that matter. Never say never. I guess crazier things have happened. But for everybody that's excited about this, I just don't think it'll happen. I mean, we'll see, but I wouldn't be holding my breath. So anyway, going to keep rolling in just a second. Shift our attention to Jacob Trouba. We've been tough on Trouba. Basically, every New York Ranger fan has been tough on Jacob Trouba at one time or another. There's times where I think it's certainly been warranted, but there were some good times with Jacob Trouba as a member of this New York Ranger team, and we're pretty much going to put a bow, write the final chapter of Jacob Trouba as a New York Ranger and talk about some of the better things, the better moments, the more fun moments that he experienced while he was a member of this New York Ranger team, and we will do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by PrizePicks. If you love sports, you're going to love PrizePicks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in on the action. Here's what you need to get started today. You can win up to 200 times your money on PrizePicks. Get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. No need to win. The $50 is absolutely guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers fun weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, where select player projections are discounted up to 25%. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly. PrizePicks, run your game. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is also brought to you by our very good friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the everydayers as always. And in our next episode, going to be talking some Ranger hockey. Obviously, they're going to play a game. They will have a back-to-back this weekend. They are at home against the Kings on Saturday at 1. Then they are at the Blues on Sunday at 6. So we'll do an episode sometime between those two games and have it out for you guys early Sunday. I would say probably at the latest. We'll break down the Kings game. That'll be one episode, and then we'll have another episode on the Blues game as well. But for right now, let's go ahead, say a couple nice things about Jacob Trouba, because like I said just a minute ago, a lot of us Ranger fans, by the end of his tenure here, we were getting sick of it. His play just was not up to par, really just in general. But then when you attach the $8 million price tag to him, it becomes that much more glaring. But there were some good moments and some fun moments with Jacob Trouba while he was a member of the New York Rangers. I have a couple of them highlighted right here and just going to go through them. They're not ranked or anything like that, but just going to jump from one to the other and talk about, obviously a couple of good things that happened for Jacob Trouba while he was here. One thing that I thought of right away is the Gordie Howe hat trick. Now, I did not remember this, and I'm sure I talked about it at the time, but this was 3 years ago, or I guess, even more than 3 years ago at this point. Jacob Trouba, I do remember him getting a Gordie Howe hat trick. I don't remember him getting a Gordie Howe hat trick in back-to-back games, but that is apparently exactly what happened in 2021. And for anyone that might be new to hockey, might not be familiar with the term, the Gordie Howe hat trick is named after Gordie Howe, all-time great, obviously. And the Gordie Howe hat trick basically means, or it does mean, that you score a goal, you get an assist, and you get into a fight all in the same game. And just for some context here, I found this while I was doing some research on this, because I was looking up the Jacob Trouba, Gordie Howe hat trick. I found out that Gordie Howe himself, despite playing in 2,421 professional hockey games, he only had 2 Gordie Howe hat tricks. So Gordie Howe is not really that high on the list as far as all-time leaders in Gordie Howe hat tricks. I just found that kind of funny, and that's just kind of a fun fact for you guys as well. A good piece of trivia if you ever want to trick, one of your friends or something. But I also found out Rick Tocchet is the all-time leader with 18 Gordie Howe hat tricks, and then number 2 all-time, Brendan Shanahan, with 17 Gordie Howe hat tricks. But anyway, back to Trouba here. Back in 2021, once again, Trouba had back-to-back Gordie Howe hat tricks against the Blackhawks and the Avalanche on consecutive days. He is only the second player ever to get the Gordie Howe hat trick on back-to-back days. Not necessarily back-to-back games. That's probably happened more times, but back-to-back days. One hockey game one day, one hockey game the next day. You get a Gordie Howe in both of those. The only other player to do it was Doug Risebrough in 1975. So it had been some time. To do some quick math here. Yeah, almost 50 years, 47 years there between, or I guess 46 years that would be, between back-to-back consecutive day Gordie Howe hat tricks. But Jacob Trouba accomplished the feat no more than 3 years ago. And believe it or not, some of you that might be new to this show the last, season or even the last handful of months here, I used to be a pretty big Jacob Trouba fan, at least compared to other Ranger fans that you see on social media, certainly other podcasters as well. I remember at the end of one of these Jacob Trouba Gordie Howe hat tricks, he got into a fight right at the end of the game. The game was basically over, and he's throwing down. And I remember talking about it and coming back on here and saying, how do Ranger fans not like this guy? Now, I think his play slipped dramatically since then. But at the time, yeah, man, he was out there throwing down. And like I said, back-to-back Gordie Howe hat tricks, that was pretty cool to see. Okay, so another big Jacob Trouba moment. The multiple fights against the Calgary Flames. This was pretty wild just 2 seasons ago. I refer to it as the out-of-nowhere rivalry between the Rangers and Flames. These two teams just completely out of the blue started playing some pretty crazy games against each other, and Jacob Trouba was in the middle of all of it. He was laying some pretty devastating hits. There was one game where he ended up getting into 2 fights He, on both occasions, delivered a clean hit and had to fight for his life against one of that player's teammates right after that. And it's funny because, Trouba at times, people will take issue with some of the hits that he's given. And certainly there have been times where he's towed the line or even crossed the line. Not here. These were 2 hits, open ice hits, clean as a whistle, nothing wrong with them. And both times he got attacked afterwards. The first time he put a big hit on Dubé, and then he was challenged by Tanev. Trouba won that fight. And then later in the same game, just an absolutely massive hit on Kadri. And then Dubé challenges Trouba, and Trouba, won that fight decisively. So definitely an interesting game that was in the Garden. The Garden was rocking that night. That was awesome. 2 fights and, clean hits. He has to fight both times, and he wins both fights. You got to like that. As far as playoffs go, to me, the big moment for Jacob Trouba in the playoffs that stood out to me that I immediately thought of, I remember he scored a big goal against the Penguins when the Rangers were down 3-1, right in the middle of that rally there. The Rangers are down 3-1 in the series. Game 5 is in Madison Square Garden. Rangers had been embarrassed in games 3 and 4. They're down 2-0 in this game. All of a sudden, they start coming back late in the second period. You get a goal by Fox. You get a goal by Lafreniere. And then Trouba scores to give the Rangers a 3-2 lead. He had it at the point, did Trouba, and fakes Jeff Carter completely out of his skates, veers to his left, gets kind of like the slot area, and then flicks a backhand shot into the net, gives the Rangers the 3-2 lead. The Penguins tied it right after, but the Rangers did go on for the 5-3 win and obviously ended up winning that series as well. The helmet throw. I mean, how can we not talk about this, right? The Rangers 2 years ago, year 2 for Gerard Gallant, they're in, it was right around this time of the calendar. I want to say it happened maybe like in November. Trying to remember, but bottom line, Rangers are scuffling, just playing some very flat and uninspired hockey. Not too much different from what's been going on here lately. I mean, I know they just beat Buffalo, but you hope that they can build on that. But yeah, I mean, it's going terribly for the Rangers. They're down to the Blackhawks 3-0 at home, and the Blackhawks were just as bad then as they are right now. And then all of a sudden, Trouba puts a big hit on Andreas Athanasiou, and he ends up getting into a fight with Jonathan Toews. Toews basically jumped him. Barclay Goodrow was in a separate fight somewhere else on the ice. And then, Trouba's leaving the rink because there's less than 5 minutes to go in the second period. He might have gotten an instigator or something, the 10-minute ejection or whatever. Can't really remember. But bottom line, he has to leave the ice. And as he does, he yells at the Ranger bench. He takes off his helmet, fires it into the boards about as hard as he could. And after that, in the games that followed after that, next 30 games, the Rangers went 22-4-4. So that obviously, I mean, I would say that lit a fire under the Rangers. That timing is way too suspect for the Rangers to do a complete 180, just coincidentally after their captain got into a fight, yelled at them, and threw his helmet. I think for sure that had something to do with the Rangers turning things around. And we can end on something kind of light here as far as like the more fun Jacob Trouba moments are concerned. Later that same month, after the helmet throw, the Rangers are playing the Blackhawks again. And Athanasiou, after everything went down the first time around, he had some choice words for Trouba after the first matchup. This is what he had to say about Trouba after that game. He's an $8 million man with 0 goals, so he has to figure out how to do something when making that much. If you can't help the team, I guess you try to hurt guys on the other team. So when Trouba scored a goal against the Blackhawks later that month, it just so happened that Athanasiou was on the ice, and Trouba had some fun with it. He actually was not too far away from Athanasiou, and he asked Athanasiou if he wanted the puck. So that was kind of a lighter moment and kind of a fun moment for the New York Ranger captain there. Look, bottom line, it didn't work out. Things had really spiraled badly. I think that, Trouba, even by his own admission, never really got over the trade rumors that were happening during the summer, and he ends up staying here. And like I said, just didn't have it. I thought this year he got off to an okay start with Braden Schneider when the two of them were paired together, but it fell apart pretty quickly, and his play just wasn't acceptable anymore. And they move him, they clear all this cap space. So if the Rangers do get their act together and start figuring it out and start climbing back up the standings and stacking some points and getting some wins, then certainly they have all kinds of financial flexibility as far as trades they can make at the deadline. That would not have been possible if Jacob Trouba was still on this roster, unless you trade somebody else. But Jacob Trouba, trading him and moving that $8 million, that's absolutely huge for the Rangers and what they can do at the trade deadline this season. Assuming they're in position to buy, which, I mean, hey, that could go either way, but that's another conversation for another day. Bottom line, all the best to Jacob Trouba. Again, it didn't work out here. It was definitely time for a split. If anybody's wondering, the Rangers already played the Ducks once this season. They beat them 2-1 on October 26th in the Garden. There is one more matchup against the Ducks. We're going to have to wait until March 28th. That will be in Anaheim. But let's hope that all of our guys can get through that one unscathed. We shall see. But in just a second, we're going to shift our attention to the player that the Rangers acquired in the Jacob Trouba trade, and that would, of course, be Urho Vaakanainen. I think I'm getting closer. I think I'm nailing it down at this point. But we'll talk about him in just a second and what he brings to the table and what his role might be with the Rangers. All right, we just want to commit to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. We are driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate is not to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed data survey. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode by talking a little bit about Urho Vaakanainen. Again, it's been a busy couple of days. Really, we haven't had a chance to really dive into his background and who he is as a player. And, pretty much all I mentioned was the teams that he's played for and the fact that he was a former first rounder. Obviously, he's a defenseman as well. But, of course, for anybody that needs a refresher, the Jacob Trouba trade, the Ducks get Trouba. The Rangers get Urho Vaakanainen and also a 4th-round draft pick for next season. But Vaakanainen, 25 years old, 6'1", defenseman, 185 pounds. He's a lefty shot. He's currently injured. He has been reportedly wearing a green jersey at practice. Does not sound like he's too far away from getting cleared. He also participated in optional practice when he first got to the Rangers. I mean, look, I know optional is in the name, but if you just got traded to a new team, I think it's probably a good idea to show up for that optional practice, and it sounds like Vaakanainen did exactly that. As far as his background and his hockey playing career, former first-round pick, like we said, by the Boston Bruins in 2017. He went number 18 overall that year. And to kind of just put everybody back in that time period and just kind of give you a sense of what was going on and what the Rangers were up to at that time, this is the same year. Don't get mad at me. This is not a pleasant memory. This is the same year that the Rangers drafted Elias Andersson in the first round at number 7 overall. And let's just say things did not work out. They did salvage their draft that year in their first round specifically by taking Filip Chytil at number 21 overall. And obviously, Chytil's been a good player, unfortunate set of circumstances with the concussions, but Chytil, when he's on the ice, has mostly been a positive, player on the New York Rangers. The only other, even semi-notable pick for the Rangers that year was Morgan Barron in the 6th round, but he obviously got dealt to the Jets. And yeah, as far as Vaakanainen is concerned, went on to play parts of 4 seasons with the Bruins, and then in the middle of his 4th season with the Bruins, Vaakanainen was traded from Boston to the Ducks, and Vaakanainen goes to Anaheim alongside John Moore, a 1st-round draft pick, and 2 second-round draft picks. And in exchange for that haul there, the Ducks sent Hampus Lindholm and Cody Curran back to Boston. And he's been with the Ducks ever since, obviously, until this recent trade here. So he's now played also in parts of 4 seasons with the Anaheim Ducks. In his NHL career, he has bounced back and forth between the NHL and the AHL several times. But in his NHL career, 141 games, 1 goal, 24 assists. He is a -23. He has averaged 17 minutes, 30 seconds of ice time, 164 block shots, and 111 hits. Last season was probably his best season, at least in terms of games played, because he ended up playing 68 games for the Ducks last year. That was a new career high. His previous high water mark as far as games played is concerned was just 29 games back with the Bruins years ago. So obviously a step up in terms of games played. And to date, he has yet to appear in a Stanley Cup playoff game. One other thing that's certainly noteworthy here is that I mentioned that he's injured. He has had probably more than his fair share of injuries, especially in recent seasons. At least 1 concussion in there. The concussion was years ago, but a couple of other undisclosed injuries, and then you get the vague upper body injury. I saw there was one. They actually said it was a hip injury. So hopefully he's okay. And, he can buck this trend of getting injured in recent seasons. We will see. As far as contract status is concerned, he is currently carrying a cap hit of $1.1 million, and he will be a restricted free agent with arbitration rights after the season. As far as like trying to figure out, what the Rangers are thinking here, was this just kind of like a throw in? Like, okay, we're trading a defenseman, so just give us some random defenseman in exchange for Jacob Trouba. I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. I feel like the Rangers might see him as sort of a cheaper alternative to some of the current guys that are currently on the roster. There's a very good chance there's going to be some overturn from this year's blue line on opening night to next year's blue line on opening night. Obviously, the Jacob Trouba trade has already happened. And you look at the other Ranger defenseman, Lindgren's in the final year of his deal. Even if he's not traded, I can't see a way that the Rangers bring him back. He's a UFA at the end of this season. And also Keandre Miller, that one could really go either way. Restricted free agent with arbitration rights. But there's word out there that, Miller is looking for a significant raise in his next contract, and he's currently making $3.87 million per season. So, yeah, Miller could really go either way. Maybe they see Vaakanainen as somebody that could step in as kind of like the sixth defenseman in that kind of a role if there's a lot of overturn on the Ranger blue line going into next season. But a couple of quotes here that I figure I can share with you guys from Vaakanainen himself and then also Peter Laviolette. Vaakanainen mentioned that he was shocked at first when the trade happened, but that he was excited second because obviously he's going from, a team that's been down in recent seasons to a team that, the recent slump notwithstanding, has obviously had some success in recent years. But this is what he had to say about it. Awesome. Rangers are a original 6-team, big team, so I'm super excited. He was also asked to describe his play for Ranger fans that obviously are not that familiar with him. This is what he had to say about that. Steady defensive defenseman, good first pass, good in the D zone. Try to jump into the rush a little bit sometimes when I get a chance, but just steady, reliable, play hard. So hopefully that all comes to fruition, and we see that on the ice, whenever he does get out there for the Rangers. And he also said, I'm not sure about the timeline yet, but I can pass and shoot the puck pretty well right now, so getting closer. He was asked to, update everybody on his injury, basically. And then Peter Laviolette had this to say. He's a guy who's got that mindset of defending first. I think he sees the game well, makes a good first pass, good player. So, yeah, I mean, if you couldn't tell from his offensive stats, I think you can probably tell from, some of the comments from both Vaakanainen himself and Laviolette. This dude is mostly a stay-at-home defenseman. Points are going to be very, very hard to come by. I mean, one goal, that's it for his entire career. And I forget how many assists. Let me scroll back up here. 26 or whatever it was, 24 assists. So, yeah, not a lot of offense, mostly a stay-at-home defenseman. But if he can excel in that role, then, it's possible that the Rangers will have a role for him to play. Right now, I don't foresee any of the Ranger defensemen coming out of the lineup in exchange for Vaakanainen. But, again, all it takes is an injury, which we have one right now. Keandre Miller's injured, and we'll see if he's cleared to play in these weekend games. If that happens, maybe he becomes an option. If one of these guys is traded, we've talked about how the Rangers, it sounds like they're still open for business. Miller's name has come up every now and then. Kevin Weeks mentioned that, Miller's name had been coming up recently. Lindgren, a lot of Ranger fans are trying to drive him out of town. I think there's a decent chance that he gets traded as well. So if that were to happen, and if the Rangers weren't to acquire another defenseman in some other trade, then Vaakanainen maybe becomes, an option for this team to be in the lineup at least for a handful of games. We will see. For what it's worth, he does know, and he mentioned this, he does know Capo Kakko. The two of them were together the 2019 World Juniors. They were both a part of Finland's gold medal winning team that year. So I think everything else being equal, when you get traded, it's probably a nice thing if you know at least, one or two of the players in the locker room. And it sounds like the two of them, certainly play on the same team. I don't know how much they interacted, but, some familiarity there to be sure. I thought this was kind of funny. I'm trying to find any information that I can. There was a funny situation at the World Juniors. He's playing for Finland. He's in the penalty box, and Finland is leading Canada 4-2 with 39 seconds to go. He signed an autograph for a fan while he was in the penalty box. The fan basically slipped like a notepad through the little crack in the penalty box glass there, and he just signed it and handed it right back to him. So I thought that was kind of funny. And Vaakanainen was also an alternate captain on that Finland World Juniors team for whatever that might be worth. As far as his role, like I said, I don't see him unseating any of the guys that were in the lineup last night, but healthy scratch number 7 defenseman type role. I could see that for him for sure. And like I said, all it takes is an injury to this guy or whatever it might be, where he might get an opportunity. So we'll see what we have. It is interesting that he is a former first round pick, and maybe there's some untapped potential that the Rangers can get into, but we will see. Figure we can call it there for today. Once again, if you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.